welcome everyone to our 2:30 afternoon session. Please come in and take your seats. There's plenty of seats down here in front. And the smart people got here early and got the comfortable chairs. I think that I want one of those next year up here. That'd be a lot better. My name is DeVol, and I'm the Chief Research Officer at the Milken Institute, and I will serve as the moderator for this session. Innovative cities transforming their urban ecosystem. So we have a wide, diverse panel here today. The Milken Institute does a lot of work in this area, trying to advise cities and regions around the world how to develop a high value-added, knowledge-based economy, how to create quality jobs. But we always emphasize the role of social capital. And that's something we're going to talk a bit about today, is the role of social capital. I'm talking about the local network of public and private institutions that can play a key role in maximizing the economic development assets of places. And so that's really the interdependent firms, public institutions, and government playing a large role. And a lot of people leave out the government piece of that. It's absolutely critical, because when you have these well-performing institutions, you can compete against others that do not have these well-performing institutions. And we always talk about the quality of place. That means different things to different people. Some it means architecture. Some it means driving around in cool high-tech cars. Others it means, work, live in the same place. So we have a group of planners, architects, and government officials that are trying to address these urban challenges and look at transportation, affordable housing, all important issues. So how can they, with these good ideas, design metropolitan areas that are conducive to economic vitality, that are environmentally sustainable, inclusive, creativity? These are all strengths that are going to determine which are the magnet urban centers of the future. And as I said, our panelists have a wide, diverse background, but they all share a passion for promoting shared, sustainable, inclusive growth. And they bring their subject matter expertise, but probably most important, they all have a keen awareness for how the pieces fit together in an urban ecosystem. They're all components that you have to assemble. So let's get to our panelists, and their full biographies are in the program. But let's get started. To my immediate right, your left, is Andy Cohen, who is co-CEO of Gensler. And co there means more than two.
Three, actually.
Means three.
Yes.
Right. Then next to me is Claire Cockerton, CEO of Innovative Finance and chairwoman of Antique. That's how I pronounced it. We'll see if it works. And to my immediate left, your right, is Shirley Franklin, CEO of Purpose-Built Communities and former mayor of the great city of Atlanta. Thank you for joining us. Next to Shirley is Ned Couric, who is Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of Toyota. And on the far left, but not always on the left, is my colleague Perry Wong, who's Managing Director of Research at the Milken Institute. What I'd like to do is start off the session, Andy, if I could, with you on some of the physical design characteristics of building in these urban spaces, as well as open space, not just the buildings themselves. But your firm seems to have a flair for creating work environments that promote collaborative learning environments where there's a lot of social interaction. Could you share with us kind of the Gensler approach to designing these physical environments that provide workable and livable spaces?
Sure. Well, this is a profound watershed moment in the future of cities. And the one key trend that we're finding, and we're working in over 100 countries right now, is urbanization. Urbanization, where people are moving from the suburbs to the cities, and in developing countries from the farmland to the cities. In fact, 50% of the global population lives in cities today, and the UN projects that 65% of the developing world will be living in cities by 2050, and 85% of the developing world will be living in cities. And what they're seeking, what people are seeking, are not only jobs, but livable cities, vibrant, walkable, incredible amenity spaces in districts and communities. Well, we're also seeing an incredible trend about densification and high density, high compression. And we think that cities need to be looked at in 3 dimensions. Usually people are talking about it in 1 dimension, and we're looking at cities in the 3rd dimension. Call it vertical urbanism. And so a perfect example of that is a building that we're just completing, and you're going to hear a lot about, in Shanghai. Could you put the slide up, please?
Slide 1.
This is the world's 2nd tallest building that's going to be completed in October. And it's a vertical city. It's a city where it has retail and hospitality, it has offices, it has every type of amenity in a vertical environment with 30,000 people occupied in the city. Remember that in China, 25 million Chinese are moving to the urban centers right now. And that's what we're talking about, this idea of vertical urbanism. The next slide, please. The building is actually half again as tall as the New World Trade Center in New York. And what you're looking at here are 8 vertical gardens. So we created these vertical, wonderful sky gardens that become these great places as town squares to meet from the offices, from the retail, from the hotels, and from the residential, with phenomenal views all around Shanghai. And what we did is we created a double glass wall, which was a smart glass system that allowed for insulating, for humidity and so forth. But it's also, what it does is it creates this wonderful shape to the building. It becomes this iconic shape. The Chinese are calling it the Dragon's Tail building. Next, please. And at the top of the building, the Chinese were very, very interested in sustainability. So the building has these windmills at the top. There are about 1,200 windmills that will power a lot of the electricity of the building. We've incorporated many, many sustainable practices into a building. So it really is a building of the future. Next, please. And so here it is in its final configuration, the 2nd tallest building in the world, and proving that vertical integration and vertical urbanism is here to stay.
I need to pay a visit to China in the fall when that opens. Let's stay in the physical world. Ned, Toyota's doing a lot of work in pioneering reducing emissions through either alternative powertrains or improving fuel efficiency. I mean, we're in a city that was built on the auto. Angelinos love their cars. Can changes in the auto save us in the 21st century? What are we seeing happening? And maybe you could talk about hybrids and hydrogen-fueled cars a little bit.
Yeah. So Russ, on behalf of Toyota, thank you for having us here, having me here to talk about it today. Great question. I mean, save us from what I say. The world in the future is going to look definitely different than the world looks today, and transportation is going to look different. So Toyota, as a company, has done its great part in the past to lower the general emission greatly. So since we introduced Toyota Prius in '97, which many at the time saw as a sort of experiment, has proven to be a fantastic vehicle, and so far we have about 7 million of those vehicles sold. It drove emission usage a lot, I mean, emission properties much better than any other vehicle on the market. But that's not enough. I think removing that type of technology, hybrid technology, in all other vehicles, so our portfolio of the vehicles next 10 years is going to consist a lot of hybrid type of vehicles. The same year when the Prius was conceived, Toyota also conceived another vehicle, fuel cell vehicle in technology, 1992, in fact. However, that technology was extremely expensive at the time. It took years to develop the technology and drive the price down to a point where we can essentially leverage that hydrogen energy powered vehicle, battery-powered hydrogen vehicle to bring to market. So this year, sometime late summer this year, or fall this year, we're bringing a new hydrogen-powered vehicle, Toyota Mirai, to the market. It will be first of a kind, mass-produced, market sold in the United States. We see this as the beginning of the hydrogen society. How long it's going to take for the hydrogen society to become reality is a question. We, however, see because of such an abundance of a hydrogen element in the universe as a very inexpensive, readily accessible source of energy. So that's our contribution to saving the world, if you will. But it will not happen overnight. It will take time, and I think next 40, 50 years or so, we'll see wide range of vehicles and transportation systems available to general public and mass transportation.
Very good. We'll come back to the technology angle in just a moment. Shirley, let me turn to you. As a former mayor of a major city, you bring an added public policy dimension to this whole discussion. Your work in Atlanta and helping transform a formerly blighted community into a vibrant neighborhood is one that you and others are trying to emulate around the country. And it's a real challenge, but could you kind of explain the approach that you took in the East Lake Meadows area and just how it's been transformed?
Well, thank you very much, and I certainly have enjoyed the conversation so far, and the words sustainability, a better world, building a better opportunity for more people is kind of our foundation. So East Lake Meadows was known as Little Vietnam in the 1970s and 80s because, in fact, it was an area that many felt was war-torn. In other words, it was an area that most public officials, most private leaders felt could not be saved. In other words, it needed to be isolated. One philanthropist came forward, Tom Cousins, and was spurred by some reading that he had done and thought that he wanted to direct his attention just to this one neighborhood. And in fact, out of that grew a model which is a comprehensive model, some call it holistic, focused on affordable housing, mixed income housing, cradle to college education, and wellness programs or community wellness programs that work together in concert under the direction and leadership of a local nonprofit called a community quarterback, right, or lead organization. The result of that work over the years has shown that we can bring not just investment to the community, but also community engagement. And that community engagement has helped to turn that community around. The school that was the lowest performing elementary school in the city of Atlanta is among the highest performing elementary schools. Low-income people can still live in the community. The mixed income housing assures that low-income people can stay in the community, they're not pushed out. It also assures that middle-income people can move in the community because of the amenities. So lower crime rate, higher student achievement, stability in terms of the community's engagement in the day-to-day activities. The result today, some 20 years later, is we're in 11 cities, from Fort Worth and Houston and Omaha to Birmingham and Spartanburg. And our first follower, so to speak, was in New Orleans after Katrina. And these are all locally initiated projects that seek our assistance and our counsel in how to put together a model that will work for these formerly devastated and disinvested high crime communities.
So what you're telling us is there is hope.
Oh no, we're very hopeful. Not only are we hopeful, we believe we have a model that will work when people are interested in it. We have an interesting approach to this, which is our market is the people who are interested in the model that we've developed. We don't believe that it's the only way to do it, but we do believe that we can show that it's sustainable over time, it's financially viable, it's replicable, and that there are people all over America who want to see a new way to address concentrated poverty and really the isolation of people who are concentrated in that poverty.
Very good. Claire, let me turn to you. Now we're going to turn to the economic development innovation, all right? So you do a lot of work in trying to work with the private sector to forge connections with tech incubators, entrepreneurs, and inclusive economic development. And you're really trying to solve urban, social, physical problems by incubating technology, principally among small firms, but other firms as well. Could you, I mean, the work that you've been doing in the fintech area is really fascinating. I know you've discussed that on other panels, but when we were on the call before the panel, one thing that really fascinated me was the cognicity challenge and the various projects that are being utilized, for example, to reduce congestion, reduce costs. Could you explain how technology is being used in that area?
Sure, okay. So for those of you who don't know about NTIC, NTIC is building ecosystems to foster entrepreneurship and innovation. And we do that in 3 ways. First, we build business incubators like Level 39, designed by my great esteemed colleague over here, Gensler. And these spaces are for entrepreneurs, corporates, investors to come together and build their businesses. So this is a business incubator. We also run accelerator programs, and these are innovation programs to enable young companies to partner with corporations and VCs to get their product to marketplace. And these are generally challenge-led innovation programs. And finally, we build industry organizations. And recently, we just launched an organization called Innovate Finance, which is dedicated to the UK's fintech scene and helping us change policy and the regulatory environment to enable fintech companies to flourish in the UK. Back to your question about our accelerator programs and how we activated the space that was so well designed at Level 39. We designed a program called Cognicity. And Cognicity is a challenge-led series of startup competitions backed by Canary Wharf Group. And for those of you who don't know, Canary Wharf is in the East End of London, and it is a privately owned little mini city, a little microcosm where we might pilot new technologies. And we designed a program called Cognicity so that we could procure from new tech companies the technologies that we will retrofit within our buildings and use to design the future buildings that we will build. Cognicity has 6 streams: integrated transportation, waste management, sustainable building, building information management, and each one has 7 companies working within that program. It's challenge-led, it's backed by a big corporate like an Intel or a Schneider Electric, and we work with these entrepreneurs over the course of 3 months to get them to pilot in the Canary Wharf estate. One of the streams is in integrated transportation. And one of our companies is called Voyage Control, the winner of that particular challenge. And they are looking to use real-time data to map out the logistical processes across the city. And you make better use of the excess capacity that we have in our trucks and lorries that move around the city.
Well, Level 39,
yes,
and you're being humble, is a workplace of the future. It really is all about collaboration and the future of the way work is being done. And you're being very humble about it because this space is phenomenal. It has a very collaborative space. It has different types of environments for different choices that workers have in today's market. And it's been an incredible accomplishment working with you.
But what's really cool, at least from my biased perspective, is that you have benches made out of old computers. And I don't think you even knew this. Your firm actually designed them, right? And Claire's staff told me about it and the connection there. So
it was Claire's vision.
It was very good.
We took floor plan panels and made them into to tables, and we really embraced this concept of upcycling. So if you're retrofitting a building, how you can make use of the materials that are already there without bringing in a whole bunch of new materials.
Let me turn to my colleague, Perry Wong. Much of the work you do is educating people on how to create quality jobs in cities that are sustainable. But rapid growth can lead to its own demise at times. Could you explain kind of the role of the smart cities discussion in all this and and how it can help eliminate some of those congestion and friction, and maybe give us an example or two of who's doing it right.
Well, I think if someone can solve the problem, that particular individual should get a medal, maybe a Nobel Prize. Tough order, but I think let me backtrack a little bit, I think, on the concept of smart cities. Many think that smart city is something we aspire to. This is a blueprint, a model for future development. I would like to think it very differently. I think smart city is a conceptual framework that you create an entity that is livable and sustainable. So under those vague concepts, if you will, then you get into the elements that how in the future, scenario number one, or scenario number two, how you change your past. So there will be two parts. So in the changing future parts, then it goes back to not only talking about building design, and perhaps we should look at the spatial arrangement of a city, that how you rationalize giving the natural resources and constraint of a regions. So in the case of California, maybe we should think about how to minimize water usage. In China's case, perhaps we should adopt technology that can eliminate pollutions quicker, if there is a method. So under those concepts, I think, yes, I think smart technology, a smart city growth strategy can definitely help. Case in point, one of the most radical thing, and I wouldn't call it smart, but the outcome is smart anyway, is one of the large city in central China. When the city grew to the point that the traffic became a gridlock in the center of the city. So the solution of the Chinese government, rather than mitigate, the government decided to move the entire city hall complex from the center of the city to the outskirts. Immediately, two things happened. It really reduced the traffic in the central district, providing room to business and shoppers. So that's what I call not the smartest move, but have the smartest outcome. So that's one example on the far end, since I'm on the left. So on the other hand, if you look at some of the better run city, since I'm from Hong Kong, so I'm going to advertise Hong Kong a little bit. Hong Kong perhaps has one of the most, I think, used and this word, three-dimensional use of its space. So now, we all know when a city runs a metro transit, the chances are it's going to be in red forever. Because it's a public transit, you cannot charge too much on fare, and you have to carry the load of people. So it's on subsidies, and at best, it's running even. But Hong Kong somehow, when the conception was made in the 70s, Hong Kong government, for whatever reason at that point, decided that it got to be a government-sponsored, government-partner initiative or project that led the private corporation to run it. So it's not a charity, it's not just a public service. Now, the interesting part of the story then is that the building of the railway station or subway station later on was integrated or still is integrated with zoning and development. So if you, I don't know how many people visited Hong Kong, you will see one of those funniest things, at least the way I look at it. On top of the subway station, you have high-rises, offices. Mm-hmm. And you have corridor not only linking office underground or also above ground, and you have 2 or 3 layers between the subway track to the surface. And in between, you can do the following things: your laundry, your breakfast, your restaurant, pharmaceutical stores, clothing stores. So in other words, it's a utilization of space that can mitigate transit. Now, that's a building concept. So from that perspective, so at least in a smart city concept, I think, on the macro scale, we need to think about rationalized space in a way that we can minimize transit. That's on one end. And on the more upside end, to tie to Claire's concept of entrepreneurial technology, then I think given that we can build a lot of sensors nowadays to monitor just about anything. So the city can really give out public information on the time, location of any public transit or any traffic condition on the surface so people can avoid them. So mitigation and reduction has to be in conjunction to make that work.
Shirley, let's talk a moment about public-private partnerships and the role. We discussed this over the phone, but when you look at urban areas, it seems that you really need business leadership to help drive that. Has that been your experience in working?
Well, there's no question about it. Atlanta has a long history of public-private partnership long before I was involved in public life, and the part of the job, my job as mayor, was to ensure that those lines of communication and that collaboration continued. So the expansion of the airport in the 1980s was very much driven by the private sector coming to the public sector and saying, we need to be sure that we keep our position as an air hub, an aviation hub in the southeast region. And that was a collaboration between the public sector and private sector, and actually still is in terms of the funding of aviation travel in the South in Atlanta. But the model that we have with purpose-built is similar to that, which is the private sector is very much in a leadership role in partnership with the not-for-profit and public sectors, because we recognize when we go into communities that we need the skills, the experience, the network, and the vision of the private sector in order to tackle some of the toughest social problems and economic problems that a city faces. So purpose-built communities, as we know it, would not exist had this relationship not developed in all of the cities that I named. And we look very much, not just for philanthropy, but for sitting CEOs, corporate leadership, entrepreneurs, to work with us on building those partnerships. It's hard to be from Atlanta and not to be in favor of public-private partnership. If you know anything about the history of the city, all the way going back to the Civil Rights Movement, and even before that in 1895, I mean, there's plenty of experience, generations deep. So the challenge for our city is to maintain those relationships and not to have one sector or the other kind of get so far ahead of the other that you can't develop those alliances long term. I worked for Andrew Young, who was mayor of Atlanta, and he talked about that a lot in the 1980s. And even though he is a civil rights leader, he was clear from day one that the success of the city would be dependent on the partnership with the private sector. So just one brief story. For the most part, private leadership, business leadership did not support him in his nomination or in his campaign for mayor in the 1980s. But the first meeting that he went to after he was elected was a meeting of business leaders and entrepreneurs brought together by Mr. Guazzetta, who was the chairman and CEO of the Coca-Cola company, in which he said, I can get elected without you, I cannot govern without you, and the city cannot succeed without you. Now, I wasn't there, but business people repeat that because they believe it generations later. So what I've heard here, the sustainability, the replicability, the innovation, the willingness to try something different is largely going to come from the private sector.
Very good. Let's turn back to entrepreneurship for just a moment, because it seems to be such an important characteristic of the most successful cities we're seeing. Savvy entrepreneurs, and really the millennial generation seems to be the one that's really taking on this challenge. And what are they really looking for? What attracts the millennials to the city and fosters entrepreneurship, and what can we do to support it? Claire, maybe I can get your perspective on that.
Sure, many things. So great infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and physical infrastructure. So great spaces at discount prices. Places that provide a whole bunch of support services to businesses, professional services, legal, accounting, talent. They need to attract developer talent, designer talent, commercial talent. So you need a lovely flow of great people that they can grow their businesses with. Entrepreneurs want, I think, first and foremost, a marketplace. And that's what is so unique about Level 39, because we don't take equity from our startups or invest in them. We're actually trying to connect them with clients and market opportunities or piloting opportunities. So they want a marketplace. And then they want capital. They want a lot of money, and they want to be able to forge the partnerships they need to scale as well, whether that's a public-private partnership or not.
Right. Perry, how important is entrepreneurship in the success of cities today?
I think it's everything. I don't think that the old model that you get a single large corporation into your regions, that will be the answer to the future.
Right.
I think in the future, I would see if we do it right, we design the right building, have the right infrastructure, probably would enabling information access and analytics. So that actually decrease the cost for someone to start their own business and more connected. So in that way, it's really individuals or a group of very creative people to create their own jobs. I think that probably is the future. And if that's the case, entrepreneurship is perhaps on top of the list in helping the city to grow further. I mean, now, I don't mean to imply that large corporation is not important. They are incredibly important. But their stage is not going to be on the city, that city, or that region, or that country. Their vision is the globe. So the city ought to look at what you have. And the best ingredient in the city is communities and people. If you can get those and say, I'm happy here, I can get a job, I can live here, this is the livability part of the smart city. So if you have that, then I don't think you should worry. And then that almost can shore up a region's tax base.
I would add from a design
Andy.
perspective that the millennials, by 2020, 50% of the workforce is going to be millennials. And what they're seeking is authenticity, creativity, innovation. And we're seeing it in all the projects that we're creating, like with Claire. Projects that range from, they're looking for the authenticity in their buildings, like Lodo as an example in Denver around Union Station, or the Meatpacking District in Soho in New York. Or in San Francisco, we just finished Airbnb's headquarters in an old 1927 battery plant. Authenticity that promotes that innovative qualities, that promotes the culture that it's embedded in the millennials. They're looking for that authenticity. Yeah.
If I can build on that and add a glimmer of hope for all of those of you who aren't millennials, it's not just the young who need to embrace entrepreneurship. There is massive contraction of old state industries like financial services, where there is a whole bunch of very educated, expert professional service providers who are now starting to embrace entrepreneurship for their next career. So it's not just the young, it's those of us whose industries are transforming who need to embrace entrepreneurship.
Aren't women entrepreneurs becoming even more critical, especially look at the millennial generation? It seems like many more are opting for the entrepreneurship role than they would have in the past. I mean, do you see that in your work?
Sure. I mean, I sit at the cross-section of financial services, technology, and entrepreneurship. So
all those areas that typically don't have a lot of women.
So diverse.
Right.
And, great. So absolutely critical. I would also say that a multicultural diversity is really important. More and more our cities need to be global in nature. And so if we have people from around the world who are part of our ecosystem and our talent bed, then we can really think globally. I think you need intergenerational diversity within your teams and cross-disciplinary diversity as well. So just because you're a financial services organization doesn't mean you need a damn good designer or you don't need a really good product development person or commercial person. Right. You need that cross-disciplinary stimulation to build the products of the future.
Very good.
Ross, even in Eastlake, which is now 20 years old,
yes,
it started with the 3 elements that I described, but just recently working with a local university, the business school have launched an entrepreneurship program for the residents. both those who are educated and those who are living closer to the poverty line. And we are very hopeful that we'll see over the next few years, really the growth of entrepreneurship has been described by Perry and others as part of what helps to stabilize the community for the next 20 years.
Yeah. Let's get back to transportation systems again. And I know Toyota's done some really exciting work looking at autonomous and semi-autonomous vehicles. You're not alone, but you're certainly up there. Give us a glimmer of what's in the future with semi-autonomous. Maybe fully autonomous is still a bit farther away, but maybe the semi is not too far away.
Yeah, so this is a great conversation. I mean, I have so many points of view here around all these topics, authenticity and
Jump in.
personalization and things like that. I think if you look at the millennials, I mean, those are very interesting things for them, and they do want to have a personalized sort of transportation, if you will. So if you look at transportation of the future, you know, I got a car, I want to personalize that car. Right now I have a device, I personalize that device. And so technology will make that happen. In the future, we can see that you know, semi-autonomous vehicles will allow us to do things in a spaces that we transport ourselves from A to B. So today, how many of you use your vehicle as your office? In the morning, the first thing I do is I call people and I spend 60 minutes on the phone. I do my conferences and things like that. I mean, innovative spaces like Level 39 is fantastic, but we cannot not transport ourselves from A to B. Not all of us going to live in a building where I can do laundry and do my work and find my mate and, you know, everything else. We still have to move from A to B to C and so forth. So transportation is going to be very critical. Personalizing, humanizing transportation is a key. So a lot of entrepreneurs and people that make big in the Silicon Valley and elsewhere, the first thing they do, they take the check and they go to Lexus dealer and they buy their beautiful vehicle and they try to personalize that, and or BMW or Porsche, whatever it might be. So the vehicles of the future will require to be connected all the time. Perry talked about the sensors. Vehicles of the future and the transportation system of the future will be connected. They will spit a lot of information out of them that will connect the vehicles to other vehicles to make the transportation safer. Vehicles will get connected to infrastructure. So in the Paris example where the subway takes you to a building and you know what's going on up on the streets, well, there may be a shared vehicle out there that you'll know on your mobile device waiting for you that particular moment as you get out. You can jump in and go to your destination. Things like that will happen very, very shortly here. You mentioned something, you know, everybody's working on autonomous and semi-autonomous. That technology is not all new. Today, if you have a 2-year-old vehicle, the good chance, especially luxury brand vehicles, good chances you already possess, you know, have that technology or a portion of that technology in your vehicle, where it's lane detection, move detection, or some sort of advanced braking system, things like that. Those already exist. The truly autonomous vehicle where you say, well, I'm going to call my vehicle, it's going to come here, you know, in front of my door, it's going to take me to my office. That's a long tail. You know, it's possible it'll happen. It's definitely possible the full autonomous transportation system will happen on a parking spaces, on a very sort of limited geographic spaces, and it'll happen very soon. Whether it's campus, enterprise campus, and or airport. Heathrow is testing some of that. In Japan, there's a lot of sort of autonomous testing going on even in China. So that will happen. But the technology is getting so sophisticated that's now getting embedded in the vehicles. And that will make, it will make possible for the vehicles to be connected to infrastructure, to other vehicles, for safety, connectivity, for route optimization. That's going to, in general, drive the cost of energy down dramatically because we'll be able to share the vehicles, we'll be able to optimize the routes, we'll be able to personalize if I still want to have that personal experience and so forth.
I've heard some tout that potential partial solution to the traffic problems in LA, the connected cars, and that we could have twice as many cars on the road if they all knew when they should start and when they should stop. I mean, is that science fiction? How far away is that?
It's not a science fiction. I think it will happen. I think once when the cities, hopefully the design cities can work with the transportation industry and embed communication systems to which the vehicles can communicate to, that will happen here in, probably next decade. I mean, there's a lot of work that government, you mentioned nothing happens without government, and that's true, nothing happens without government. And there's a huge push in Europe, so is in the United States, to make that possible, to actually have a policy that connects vehicle and transportation system to infrastructure. It's already a pretty big movement, but it's wireless and or white space that we already have today, and or making different type of wireless technology available to make that connectivity happen. It will happen.
Are we going to have hydrogen refueling stations in California soon?
Yeah, so that's another area where government is, especially states of California, has been very, very helpful here. They have a $27 million grant to which we partner. We invest heavily with the industry to add additional 17 fueling stations this year. There's 9 existing hydrogen fueling stations in California. So we're partnering to build 17 more with the grants of California. And then we're going to build another 28 next year. So total of, I think it's close to 60, or I should have an exact number, 48 fueling stations by end of next year.
That's some cool stuff. Shirley, we need to talk a little bit more about
We need to
where
talk
we
about
live.
transportation if you're talking about Atlanta too.
Well, we better, yeah, let's go ahead.
No,
Stay
I
in
didn't mean to
transportation.
get you off of
No,
that.
you're not
but,
off track. We
I mean,
can
this
flip
kind of innovation, when you bring the kind of innovation that's being discussed, really, it helps to stabilize the city's economy, the state's economy, and then puts people in the mood to have a conversation to tackle some of the harder social issues. I mean, you can't do one without the other, in my opinion, to have a safe city. I mean, these economic divides, this concentration of poverty, we've got to tackle that too, but not to the exclusion of embracing the innovation that has been described. And many major cities have transportation problems. It doesn't help for us at Purpose Build or any of our network members to create a better community, a higher quality of living, better housing, better schools, if people can't get to work, if they can't get home from work, if it's a two-hour commute to the closest job, and there's no seamless infrastructure to support that. So I don't see this as different. I believe, you would expect this as a former mayor, that all of it's on the table.
If I can jump on
Please.
that, because Shirley was also my client at the Atlanta airport.
Right.
And the Atlanta airport is the busiest airport in the world. And it was Shirley's vision to create a gateway to Atlanta. 40% of the passengers who come through Atlanta are transferring onto other planes. And Shirley wanted us to create a terminal that reflected the culture and the nature of Atlanta. And so it's an example of how airports are the front door to cities. And it's that first impression. Often we talk about other transportation modes, we don't talk about aviation. And airports are the front door to the city. And it was Shirley's vision that created that.
Yeah.
Well, he's being more generous. I mean, it was a team of people. I did my part.
Well, let's talk just a little bit more about housing. Given the longer commute times, it seems to me there's a real opportunity to bring middle-income people back into what we used to call the inner city in some of these communities. How do we build more housing close in that has low-income, middle-income, a greater diversity? Tell us about what you're doing in some of the other cities around the country.
Well, we start in the lowest income communities, but our model is designed to make sure that the outcome of all of our work is a mixed income community.
Right.
And that mixed income is cross-generational, it's cross-cultural, and what attracts middle income and people who have a choice as to where they live is the other amenities that go along with that. So are they connected with the rest of the community? Are there the natural amenities that we've heard described in terms of your personal life? Is it safe? The financing of that is complex. In most of our communities, it involves some federal grants. Much of the money, though, comes from private investors as well as from philanthropists. And then you have to develop that model in a way that it's sustainable over time. In other words, it can't be at risk financially 5-10 years from now, and then you're back at point zero. So you have to raise the income level of the lowest income people who live there. You have to be sure that they are on a trajectory to do better in life, to be educated for some of the jobs that we've described, have been described, that their children have opportunities for post-secondary education, for STEM education, and have aspirations beyond what they've seen and known as children. But that also you can stabilize the community so that senior citizens, I might be the most senior person on the panel. I mean,
There are no senior citizens in this room.
well, I am. I vote for that. I say that because there is a huge growth in American life among seniors. In the city of Atlanta, in the last 10 years, 1 out of 9 people were 65 and older. In 20 to 25 years, it'll be 1 out of 4 or 5. So you have to accommodate them, largely living where they live today, and be sure in the neighborhoods and communities they live in today, so that you can accommodate them at the same time we're looking at youth and the millennials and younger.
Claire, isn't Canary Wharf doing more in the residential housing market, or aren't there plans to do more in Canary Wharf?
Yes.
In that area close by?
We're developing another 30 acres east of the existing estate, and it's called Wood Wharf. And the Cognicity Challenge aims to find the technologies that we will use to build out that space and embed them in the very design of it.
Hasn't Gensler been doing more work in the mixed-use residential office? Do you see more demand for that type of product today to design it?
We're absolutely seeing demand around the globe in mixed use. Just here in Los Angeles, for example, and while Shirley was talking, I was thinking about this, we helped with AEG to create LA Live in downtown LA, which was a blighted area of the southern part of the city. And now it's a regional draw, a sports and entertainment mecca, that now all the parcels around those areas now have residential, have retail podiums, mixed use, restaurants spilling out to the streets, and now it's going over to other districts like the Arts District. And you've seen this revitalization of downtown LA like never before because of this notion of mixed use, of bringing more residents into downtown LA.
Right.
I just want to add, though, if you're not intentional about including mixed income, that can easily get lost in the vision. So we hope that there are more and more models like ours, not necessarily just our model, that build the mixed income, including the very low income, so that we're not segregating people based on their income. We think they need to be mixed into, everyone is better served if we're mixed into the vibrancy of our local neighborhood and community.
Another area that the Milken Institute does a lot of work in is the importance of physical activity, health, and educational performance. You can't have unhealthy kids that achieve their full potential in school, and many inner city areas don't really have good physical education programs. Tell us a little bit about the Y, the program that was developed in Atlanta and working with the Y.
Well, Atlanta has an interesting, it is designed in a way that the school and the Y are essentially the same building. There's a slight divider, 6 inches or 4 inches, that's required by the city code. But the Y actually has been providing the physical education training for the school children. So during the day, when most people are at work, in fact, the Y is used by the senior citizens, the older people, and also the children. And that has become a community center in a part of the city that was completely devoid of community gathering places. It's one of the most integrated places across all backgrounds and experiences in the city of Atlanta. So it has a pool and tennis courts and community rooms, and it also becomes a place where our partners, whether it's the sports teams or the universities or the other nonprofits, can come in and actually work with the community on site and the community's ownership. So some of you would say, well, how do you afford that if you're low income? Well, our membership at East Lake Y is on a sliding scale, and families, the lowest income families, are paying a membership fee as low as $5 a month, which gives them the opportunity to fully participate in all the programs and also have some skin in the game. And that model, the YMCA is one of the national partners that we have, although we work with other not-for-profits around the city.
Andy, hasn't your firm been doing more work in the health and wellness practice and on the architectural side?
Yes, it's health and wellness, not medical, because we've been focusing on integrating wellness into all the projects we're working on, across lifestyle, hotels, to offices, and I'll give you an example of in an office, how we're integrating wellness, from having buildings that are not hermetically sealed, so we have operable windows, to having vertical staircases that connect 2 and 3 floors. We learned from Steve Jobs to put the food in the center of the space and draw it like a magnet to the center, and using healthy food products versus not healthy food products. So there's this whole new wave of thinking of, through Delos, of mind matters and health matters, and it's integrated into the process. So it's a preventative. We're into the preventative design, not into the cause design, and that's the one thing we're focusing on, is integrating that into our design practice.
Very good. Perry, let's turn back to China real quick. Are there unique challenges that you find in China and other Asia countries, maybe some examples in trying to make this work there? How's it different in any way?
I think China has yet, hopefully they won't. I think one of the byproduct of very rapid development is in such a compressed time periods. The urban blights is not there yet, but you can see there are corner of cities that is not doing as well as some of the central district and others. Now, the government actually, they could find easily way to deal with those particular issue. They are changing some of the registration system, so granting those laborer to be the city dweller, and that would be part of the solution. Education is another issue that the government has yet to find a very effective way. But just go back, I think, a little bit on community building and school nutrition and all this. I think mixed using space in the community perhaps is one of the most important elements. I really like the idea of a housing mixed income housing. And I thought we should go maybe 1 or 2 steps further than that. I think we should build retail shops. We should encourage people living in the city to visit the neighborhood. Because the one thing about ownership, housing, home ownership, the happiest moment is that you know the area that you live is connected to other city. You are not isolated. And you gain the benefit of the rising of the city, not just an isolated community. If that can be done, I don't think too much of access to fresh fruit would be an issue, number one. And number two, I don't think that information access would be another issue. So you solve multiple big problems by having or promoting, or can be done in the zoning and tax incentive, or better yet, private-public partnership in that fashion. So I thought that would be the steps that we need to move in. And I think China actually using some of the method by, if the region has a congregation of poor, I would say less developed neighborhood, they actually using reconstruction method to build over. And then so you literally eliminate that. But I thought that would be too crude a way to be done here. But nonetheless, I think we do have a very powerful private sector, and I think they can follow incentive into building a fuller community, not just dwelling and residential.
Ned, in looking at China, are you seeing increased demand for some of your new technology, your new products, your vehicles Is it different in southern China versus other parts of China?
So it's a good question. I'd like to comment on something here that's been talked about, this vertically integrated, this is just personal point of view here, is vertically integrated, spaces and cities and so forth. We announced we're going to move some people over to Plano, Texas, and personally, I'd really like to live in one of these vertically integrated condos. But I look at the price of these things. I mean, the condo itself is not that expensive. I mean, it's expensive for average of us, but it's the monthly cost that's absolutely not sustainable. I'm looking like a pretty decent salary, and I can afford things, but at $3,000 a month for just paying for accessory or access to accessory, just not sustainable for many of us. So you mentioned, Shirley, that how do we build these cities where we integrate people in the communities? Somebody like me can afford to live in one of these high-rises. I can't imagine other people living in these high-rises. So it's an interesting problem to be solved in China. You're going to have this isolation of people that live in these cities, and they're going to have a Ferraris parked in the garages. And then you're going to have different cities outside of these cities. So it'll be an interesting problem to be solved. Now, the question of China and technology, China is moving in many ways faster than the rest of the world in adopting technology. I mean, they didn't have wireless, they didn't have wired network, so they built this amazing wireless network. So access to information and access to sensory information, in particular what we call today Internet of Things, is fascinating in China. So when we build our strategy, we build our strategy for the United States and China and Europe, and China with the forefront of our minds, because they do, in fact, have heavily invested in infrastructure to enable the information sharing.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the lightning closing round, all right? What do you want the audience to take away from this discussion? Each of you. Andy first.
Sure. That the power of design can create better cities and create a better world.
Very succinct. I wish I had you on the panel this morning. Claire?
Oh, I didn't prepare my very succinct message.
I'll give you 35 seconds.
Okay, fine. So I believe the oldest industries can be transformed through technology and through entrepreneurship, and we should all embrace this relentless pursuit of opportunity, regardless of the resources we currently have at hand.
That was pretty succinct. Shirley, what do you want people to take away from this?
I want people to take away that there are folks in every city and every community really trying to tackle what appears to be these economic divide, and that one of the solutions is the one we described, which is purpose-built communities model. But I would urge folks to look for, in their own communities, opportunities to engage on the social and human development, especially around areas of concentrated poverty.
Ned, what do you like people to take away from this?
I'd say hydrogen society and the smart transportation systems. I think that's coming. It will happen. And I think we should all get together and figure out how to maximize the opportunity in front of us.
Perry?
Well, I'm going to make it a little bit longer.
You have 1 minute and 3 seconds.
I think the playbook of smart city has to be customized to local resources. That has to be the most important consideration. And a long-term economic plan has to be the core of it. It's not just fancy technology. And I think finally, the job creation has to be the discussion point on building any smart concepts. Right. And also equitable distribution of sharing the smart city fruits had to be on the table for everyone either to watch or to consume. Otherwise, we are going to further create subdivisions on neighborhoods and communities.
Right. Well, please join me in thanking this outstanding panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.